I want you to air this to the world by the tabloids and the electronic media. I want you to understand that I am responsible for all of these crimes in the Rockhampton area. The information I am about to give would never have been published by media sources unless I spoke up. You will never know me by my real name, but you can refer to me as Squeaky. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hi, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Oh, lovely to be doing another episode. So, this is a two-part episode, and I'll get to why it's two parts in a minute. First of all, before we do that, I just want to say some very quick thank yous and some hellos. So I have to start with Rosanna and Benjamin at They Walk Among Us podcast. Their support in playing my podcast advert has had such a great impact. There's been new listeners, new followers, and although this stuff doesn't really matter, I got to number 29 in the UK podcast charts, number 46 in the Australian charts, and that's a bit mental. And I know that these things don't really matter, but when you're a podcaster, when you actually do see your podcast climbing those charts, it's pretty exciting. So it's not, and that's not really why I do the podcast. That's not what I'm about. It's not what I'm into it for. But it's nice. It's just nice because what it's also brought is a whole raft of new listeners. And I welcome you all, every new person listening to the podcast. Hello. I've just got a little list of hellos. So I'm just going to say hello to Darren James. Thanks for all your posts on the Facebook group. I'm going to say hello to Sarah Caulfield, Fiona D. Prentice, Courtney Martinez, and Lacey Rowe. Is it Lacey Rowe or is it Lacey Rowe? Not quite sure. Either way, it's a brilliant name. I think, actually, honestly, I think some of the people who have joined the Facebook group have got the best names ever. I'm just going to read you these 4, which jumped out at me and made me laugh because they are so brilliant. So hello to Johnny Domingo. How great is that? Johnny Domingo. Rena C. Shanna Bow and Erwin Pickles. Erwin Pickles wins the award for best name I've seen in a while. Brilliant. Okay, on with the episode. So I said I would tell you how this came to be a two-parter, and it's this. I started looking at one peculiar incident, and it's something that I thought, okay, that's a really interesting story. I'm really looking forward to looking into that and then telling that story. But I was aware there is a bit of context to it. There is a bit of how we got here to this peculiar event. So what I'll do is I'll look a little bit at the context because then I can tell a proper story. So rather than telling you half of something, I thought, you know what? I'll just get the context right and then be able to tell the story. Oh my God, the context is so much more interesting than I could ever have believed it to be. It's the story of someone I had never heard of. Australian listeners, you may have heard of this person. I certainly had never heard of this man. And so the context, became actually the first part of these 2 parts of episodes. Okay? Are you with me? Okay? Let's go. Let's start with the absolute monster that is Leonard Fraser. Okay, who was he? He was born in 1951 in Australia, and he died in an Australian prison in 2007. Let's look at why Leonard Fraser was ever in prison in the first place. In 1999, 9-year-old Kira Steinhardt is walking home from school. Kira had wanted to ride her bike to and from school, but her parents, they thought this might be a bit dangerous and that walking would be best. So she takes a shortcut to get home, and she walks through the grounds of a vacant allotment. And it's a big sort of like wasteland for ages of just nothing. And then on the sort of edges of it, there's some housing. So a married couple in their 50s, they are sitting outside of their house on the edge of this allotment, and they're sitting on the veranda. They are having lunch. Now they see Kira walking through the wide allotment space, and they're maybe only 100 yards away from her. Remember that in what I'm going to tell you. Remember that they're only 100 yards away. So on that afternoon, the couple also see, as well as Kira, they see a man walking not too far behind her. Now the couple, they recognise this picture. They had seen Kira walking through the same allotment past their house only 24 hours beforehand. So the day before, they had seen Kira walk through here, but they had also seen the same man walking not too far behind. Now you're probably thinking what I was thinking. Do something. You've seen the same alarming thing 2 days in a row. Now I know that in society we try to be polite. I know we put our heads down when a fight breaks out, or sadly if we see racism on the street or we hear a sexist comment, we put our heads down and we pretend that we've not seen it. But for God's sake, this couple have seen a 9-year-old on her own walking through this wasteland, followed by a man 2 days in a row, and they've said nothing. Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me on? Without derailing the story too much, I'll tell you about one of my closest and most valued friends, Robbie. He recently got himself into a real situation on a train when he heard a group of guys talking about a woman who had just got off the train saying the words, "What she needs is a good slap." He went absolutely bananas. He caused such a scene. He marched up to this group of men and asked them why did they think it was okay to talk about a woman like this. The whole thing got very heated. It ended in police. The whole thing was a mess. But at least he stood up for hearing something and needing to do something about it. There's nothing worse. There's nothing fucking worse than people who witness something and do nothing about it. Okay, so back to Kira walking home. The couple assume that the man walking behind her is her father. Odd. Okay, that's what they assume it to be. To me, that's odd. Get this, what happens next. The husband, he goes inside for a second. And as his wife is watching Kira walk through the land, Kira is struck over the head by the man who is following her. The woman, she jumps up, she shouts for her husband, and when he comes out, he can't see anything, so he doesn't quite believe his wife. The man who had hit the girl gets up, and moments later he runs off. Now in this time, the man has raped 9-year-old Kira, and it's been witnessed. So the husband, he jumps from the veranda, he runs into the land, and he says, I can't really see anything. He comes back a few minutes later, and he's like, I'm not really sure what's happened here, Anyway, they go inside. It takes them 40 minutes to call police. It takes them 40 minutes to call police and report that a suspicious man was following a young girl and that they think he may have hit her over the head. Now you're probably as outraged as I am about the fact that it's taken them 40 minutes to call anyone. This will become a huge part of this story, is that people are in outrage at the fact that it took them so long to do anything about it. In the 40 minutes that it took them to do it, here's what happens. The man returns. He scoops up Kira's body. He wraps it in his t-shirt and he puts her body in the boot of his car. This 40-minute gap would become a major bone of contention for the community. They were seriously pissed off that it took that long to call police. Police, they get to the scene and they quickly discover that the man who took Kira, he hasn't done a great job of covering up his crime. There are footprints, there's one of Kira's shoes, there's tyre tracks from his car. So this goes to the media immediately. Pictures of Kira were released and warnings were issued to parents to be on the lookout for their children. So among the people watching the news, there was a prison warder called Ben Robson. Ben Robson has some really interesting information. He is sure that he not only knows the man who would have done this very thing, but that he also saw the man just an hour before Kira was taken. He knows exactly who this man is. Why? Because the man in question had previously been sentenced to 20 years in prison for theft, assault, and rape. And the man's name is Leonard Fraser. Okay, who was Leonard Fraser? Well, let's look back at what happened in the years before the death of Kira. He was the fourth of 5 children born to his family in North Queensland, Australia. His mum was a stay-at-home mum, his father a machinist who worked away from home quite often. As a child, teachers remember him as someone who couldn't concentrate at school, someone who was prone to outbreaks of rage. Leonard Fraser was below average intelligence and he had a speech impediment. At age 14, he left school. He went to Gosford's boys' home at age 15. He'd been caught stealing, and as punishment, he was to spend a year in the boys' home. Now, this school, unfortunately, became notorious years later for the amount of sex abuse cases that came out of the school. So a lot of the boys who had attended that school had been really badly sexually abused whilst they were there. A psychologist looking at the case of Leonard Fraser years later said this: "This boys' home was almost certainly where he learned to take. If you can take someone's property, then you can almost certainly take sex. If you learn at 15 to take sex when you want it, that's hard when you're an adult to unlearn." So there was a rape culture in this school, and he was firmly placed into it. Once out of that school, he moved to South Queensferry, and he goes on to hang out with prostitutes, drug dealers, petty criminals. However, he goes on to do so much worse than anyone he's hanging around with. He commits a series of sex attacks on women in the South Queensferry area. And it's during one of these attacks that he drops his wallet. He's quickly tracked down and he's sentenced to 22 years in prison. Right, this might be upsetting, so I'm just giving you a warning. The rape that he committed, where he dropped his wallet and got caught, was so brutal that the woman he raped had to have 3 months of surgery on her body, and she was never able to reproduce because of how badly he had damaged her organs. And I know that's grim. It's so fucking grim. I know. I had to stop at this point actually when I was going through it and think, fuck, that's brutal. That's really brutal. So, he'd been imprisoned for the rape, but he only served 7 years of the sentence. A prison psychologist deemed him a psychopath, unfit to live among other people, but he was released. He's unfit to live among other people. Why are you releasing him? What's happened here? So, out of prison, what happens? Take a guess. He attacks another woman. He's caught by police shortly after, and this really sticks out to me as a major mistake, a big fuck up. Despite 7 years in prison for rape, he's only given 2 months for the assault on this woman. Good Lord. So after the 2 months, he gets out. He's free. He's walking around Australia, having a lovely time. Here he is, committing all these horrible sexual attacks. But now, only got to serve 2 months for it. Here he goes, out and about. So he meets a woman called Pearl, and they get into a serious relationship. Before we go on, let's just talk about how great the name Pearl is. I absolutely love it. I've got a great aunt, Pearl. She's about 114, I think. she's like a family valuable. You know one of those ones that's like, she's so old now, and it's like Auntie Pearl this, Auntie Pearl, oh god, Auntie Pearl. But she's one of the most active people I know. Anyway, shout out Auntie Pearl. She'll not have a clue what a podcast is, but hey. Well, I say that, right? She joined Facebook last year, and now she likes all my photos. So, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised if Auntie Pearl was into a podcast. Okay. Leonard Fraser is out of prison. Him and Pearl, they settle down. They make a life together. She has no knowledge of his history at all. No idea that he's been in prison for sexual assault, and so they buy a house together. Leonard Fraser gets a job in the railways. They're living happily, and actually they have a daughter together. This is all well and good. Until Leonard Fraser strikes again. Near the home that him and his wife and his daughter live in, he begins to stalk a 21-year-old female who's jogging every day down the beach on the same route. He watches her and he watches her. He takes note of what time she starts her jog, what time she passes his house. And in broad daylight, on her jogging route, Leonard Fraser jumps out, grabs her, drags her into some bushes, and he brutally rapes her, leaving her lying on the beach. Now, we all know lots of cases in true crime where crimes go unsolved for years. The perpetrator is never caught. But in the case of Leonard Fraser, he seems to get caught every time. And it's not long before police know that he is the man who's raped the girl on the beach. He's not very good at hiding his crimes. He is very quickly caught and he's sentenced to 12 years in prison. The judge residing over the case said, Leonard Fraser is an ongoing danger to society. He serves his full 12 years in prison, during which time he goes by the nickname Lenny the Loon. Great. Love to go to prison with him. Lenny the Loon. So, he does his 12 years, and I love this detail, and I hope you join in my love for it. The woman in charge of Leonard Fraser's release from prison wouldn't move 1 inch on letting him out early. There were lots of appeals. There were lots of conversations about let's let him out before he has to serve the full 12 years, and she said no. She made him serve his sentence, every hour of it, every minute, and every second. And she said, I will ensure that he is not out 1 second before his time is up for what he did to that woman on the beach. Love her. Don't mess with this lady. She's brilliant. Love that. Okay, after his release from prison, he moved to a place called Yeppen. Australians, I hope I'm saying that okay. Yeppen. Now he meets another woman, and we're now in 1997. This is a woman called Marie. Marie is in the later stages of terminal cancer. And what I'm about to tell you, I'm just warning you, it's upsetting and it's just sadistic. Marie travels to Brisbane for cancer treatment, and she leaves Leonard Fraser behind at home. He then follows her to Brisbane, to where she is in hospital, and when he gets there, she tells him the most horrible news. Her cancer's terminal, and she's only got weeks to live. Leonard Fraser, her then boyfriend, takes her for a walk, and he takes her into the hospital chapel. He locks her in a room and he rapes her. Then he flees the scene. 2 weeks later, she dies. Okay, I'm just going to let you for a minute shout out your own expletives and all the words that you want to describe this guy, because I think if I started to shout out all the words that I wanted to, we would be here for a fucking week. Okay, let's just stop. Let's recap. Let's take a breath. Because it's about to get so much worse. But I want us all to get on the same page of worseness. I started with the killing of Kira. But that was actually near the end of his crimes. He had, if you remember, already been in prison twice. 7 years for the woman whose body he badly damaged. 12 years for the woman on the beach. And out of prison, his first victim was cancer patient Marie, who I just told you about. So now we're in real time with Leonard Fraser. So he's off again. He moves to Mount Morgan. What he does next actually just highlights the... Remember I said he was low intelligence? Fuck. This is just... It's some of the things he does in his crime career are nothing short of idiocy. The man is a fucking idiot. And this is an example. So he arrives in Mount Morgan. And on his first day there, he walks up the street and he sees a parked police car. So he wanders up to the car. The officers, they roll down the window. Leonard Fraser leans his head in and he introduces himself to the officers. He says, "Hey, I'm Leonard Fraser." And he asks this question. "So, what are the women in this town like?" What an idiot. What an absolute tool. The officers immediately get suspicious and they drive off. When they get back to the station, they run his name through the computer and they see all of the past crimes, the rapes, the thefts, and so he is immediately put under surveillance by police. Can you be any more stupid? Can you? I mean, honestly, it's like, how about, it's like walking into a new town and being like, "Hey, everyone, just like to introduce myself. I'm a criminal, so it would be really nice to meet you all." Like, what? This guy is a fucking... he's a fucking idiot. So what does he do in the new town? Well, he starts targeting women with disabilities. He starts spiking the drinks of young women in the local bars. And one night, spikes a 17-year-old's drink and then drags her by her feet out of the bar, at which point they start calling police. Police arrive and he says, "Oh, I don't know what happened here. Don't know. She fell over and I just thought I would help her." Oh, come on. This guy's like... he's a... Small side note here. I was watching an interview with one of the officers who was living in the town at the time when Leonard Fraser was spiking drinks and he was taking advantage of women with disabilities, etc., etc. And this police officer, he's got a sort of like sly look in his eye as he's talking. And he says, quite often what we would do is we would pick him up, we'd put him in the back of the car and we'd talk with him. And then he kind of laughs. I would love to have been in the car for one of those talks that you had. So police are on to Leonard Fraser. They know what he's about. So eventually he's run out of town by police. They've had enough. They just get rid of him out of Mount Morgan. It's only then that they discover that in the house that he was renting, there had been so many attacks on young girls. Girls drugged and raped, women raped at knife point, and Leonard Fraser got away with it because he threatened them with death if they spoke a word about it. So now he moves to Rockhampton. The other name that Leonard Fraser goes by is the Rockhampton Rapist. That was his press name years later. So, to circle back to where I started the story, it's while he's living in Rockhampton that 9-year-old Kira goes missing. Kira's mother is calling police and she's asking, are you any closer to finding my daughter? She still thinks her daughter is alive at this point. Police are saying, well, we've got someone who we think knows something and we'll get back to you as soon as we have answers from him. So she, and oh my God, God bless this mother, she thinks that her daughter is still alive and that she's going to see her in the next few days. So Leonard Fraser, at the time, he has a girlfriend. Now how in the hell, how this guy is getting girlfriends, I don't know. I mean, I've got friends who've been single for years and they are sexy, beautiful people with lovely souls and amazing personalities. How do these creepy fuckers get girlfriends? I don't know. So the girlfriend Christine, she's separately questioned by police just to see, does she know anything about anything that Leonard Fraser might have been up to? And she says, oh wait, there's one thing that she does remember. A few days after Kira had gone missing, Leonard took them for a drive and they went to a remote area. He stopped the car, he got out, he went to the boot and he pulled out something wrapped in a shirt. Kira's body. He walks to the woodland and he reappears 10 minutes later, empty-handed. Again, can we just get a reading on how stupid this guy is? He's disposing of a body while there's a witness in the car. So they haven't arrested him at this point, which is why Christine is able to talk about the disposing of bodies. This information is enough for police to want to have a conversation with Leonard Fraser, but frustratingly, Christine can't really remember where this was. This is hugely problematic because if she could just remember where it happened, they would be able to find the body. Unfortunately, she can't. She cannot remember. So what do police do? They arrive at his door in Rockhampton. They say that they want to chat. He gets really aggressive and he wants to know why they're there. They say we're here in connection with the disappearance of a 9-year-old girl. He voluntarily goes to the police station. While he's there, he is incredibly volatile and denies everything. Police decide they have enough. They're going to arrest him for the disappearance of Kira. However, when they do that, they begin to uncover much more than they could ever have bargained for about the crimes of Leonard Fraser. There is an outpouring of love for the missing 9-year-old Kira, and the town have chosen some of her favourite areas to line with flowers, teddies, letters, so many gifts, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Honestly, the images of the tributes left are unbelievable. And remember, at this point, she's just missing. The body's not been found. No one really knows where she is. They've arrested Leonard Fraser, but they don't have a body. This is the town outpouring at the fact that she's missing. I mean, I'm talking thousands and thousands of flowers and tributes all over the town. And every time it rained, police would really quickly put up a tarpaulin to stop any of the tributes getting wet. So the search for Kira's body is massive. Christine, the girlfriend, she does her best, but she cannot remember where the car stopped. So having been arrested, Leonard Fraser is in prison, and detectives go to chat with him. He's been in for 13 days. And while at first he is reluctant to talk, he starts to open up to detectives. He describes walking behind Kira and hitting her over the head. When the detectives ask, "Is she okay?" he shrugs and he says, "I don't know." The detectives ask, "Well, where is the location of her body?" And he says, "I don't know." Horrifically, he kept this going for days. Days and days of saying, don't know where she is. But eventually, he gives in and he says, "Okay, I will tell you where she is." And he takes police to exactly where the body is. Kira's body is propped up against a tree and her throat has been cut. Fraser is charged with her murder. Her blood is found inside his car, strands of her hair on his clothing. There are a total of 340 pieces of forensic evidence. Despite all of this, Leonard Fraser says he can't clearly remember the incident. He can remember bits of it. He just can't remember all of it. Okay, let's introduce Squeaky. Now, who is Squeaky, I hear you ask? Well, Leonard Fraser says it was actually a man called Squeaky who committed the crime, and he was really only helping to get rid of the body. Yeah, sure, mate. Good one. He tries his hardest to convince police that a man named Squeaky did this. Police say, "Okay, well, where is this Squeaky then?" Leonard Fraser says, "I don't know. Yeah, he moves about a lot." Okay, so police say, "Well, what does Squeaky look like?" And he says, well, the thing about Squeaky is changes his appearance all the time. I mean, honestly, mate, come up with a better fucking excuse than this. Squeaky, are you having a laugh? I think there's some, what's that? There was like a strange puppet or something in the 80s that was called Squeaky. Like, slimy and squeaky or sleepy. No, that's a dwarf. I don't know. Something like, anyway, Squeaky is just ridiculous. So he's basically trying to pin this on someone else and saying, I only ever disposed of the body. It was Squeaky who did all this. Yeah, this is not working. Police are, of course, not buying this for a second. So at the same time this is going on, police in the same area are looking into the disappearances of 4 other young women. They're looking for Julie Turner, Natasha Ryan, Beverly Lego, and Sylvia Benedetti. Now I want you to remember the name Natasha Ryan. Her name will become very important later on. These 4 women are missing and police are looking for them. Alarm bells are ringing, and those involved in looking for Kira, they're thinking it's possible that Leonard Fraser might have something to do with these 4 missing women. Julie Turner was a mother with a grown-up daughter, a fun, happy-natured sort of woman. She was a local who had gone out with a group of friends to a nightclub in Rockhampton. At the time, when Leonard Fraser was living there, she chose to walk home from the club and she was never seen again. Natasha Ryan was a 14-year-old who had run away from home a few times, but she'd always been brought back home by police. She disappeared from the Rockhampton area around the same time as the other women. Beverly Lego was also living in the Rockhampton area. Beverly was last seen going to the Bank of Queensland on a particular day in 1999, and the CCTV footage of her withdrawing cash was the last time she'd ever be seen. And the 4th, Sylvia Benedetti, was last seen in the Rockhampton Mall area, shopping with a male. She would never be seen again. So, the operation is underway to prove his connection to Kira's murder. Police test all of the DNA that they can find. And what turns up? DNA in his car belonging to the last victim I just mentioned, Sylvia Benedetti. At the time of looking into this, the local Rockhampton hotel report to police a horrible finding. A chambermaid in the Rockhampton hotel, going about her business, goes into room 13 and she finds the most horrific sight. The hotel room walls are splattered with blood. The door and the floor are covered in pools of blood. There's blood on the ceiling of the hotel room. It's tested and it's discovered that it belongs to Sylvia Benedetti. In the room there were also bone fragments with ligaments attached and teeth lying on the floor. All of these belonged to Sylvia. Oh God, horrible. So, in a bizarre twist in the story, Leonard Fraser is let out on remand during the investigation into the 9-year-old Kira's death. Police have arrested him. They know he did it. They've held him, but they have to let him go until the trial is to take place. I mean, I have to stop there and say there are lots of moments in the Leonard Fraser case where I want to stop and scream about the Australian police in this case. He is a known rapist, but he's freed. He's arrested and then let out on bail. But I will say this, it was the 1990s and that's no excuse, but it was the 1990s and things weren't in that time probably as robust as they are now. And yeah, people who will talk about the Leonard Fraser case will say now there were lots of failings. There were so many failings along the way in this case, and rest assured, the systems have changed. This simply would not be happening in 2018 in Australia, and no police system is perfect. Look at the Body on the Beach episodes that I did. For fuck's sake, that's an example of Scottish policing at its worst. Okay. So during the time when he is out and about, he meets one of his old friends from prison, a man named Quinn. And Fraser Leonard tells him this. Yeah, they've got enough to convict me of the murder of that little girl, but it's okay. I'm going to plead insanity, and I'll just get a few years in a nut house. Oh, this man, fucking hell. During this same conversation, or convo, as an Australian would say, sorry, that was shit, Fraser Leonard says to Quinn, he's aware of the other missing girls, but he never admits to anything. So Quinn's a new character who comes into the story in a big way, and I want to introduce him here. He's an old prison pal of Leonard Fraser, but he's not in prison for anything too horrific. He stole some cars, robbed the shop. Yes, of course, none of that's good, but he wasn't in there for anything too horrific, but he was serving his time. Now Quinn, I'm not saying he's a hero, but he is, in this story, really important. He, during conversation with Leonard Fraser, starts to get a really bad feeling. And so he goes to police and he says, I think Leonard Fraser knows a lot about these women who have disappeared, and I want to help them be found. Police say, that's very noble, but why do you care so much? And he says this, I, like the rest of Australia, watched that mother of the 9-year-old break her heart on TV. And if I can help put anything that this man has done right, if I can prove he was responsible for any other crime, I'll do my damnedest. Of course, police jumped at this. The chance to have someone on the inside who could talk, they just couldn't get through to him. I mean, Fraser Leonard was a fucking idiot thinking he has a pal that he can confide in. So he tells him, Fraser tells Quinn, the story of how he killed Sylvia in the hotel room. He says he'd gotten to know her around town, and he says to Sylvia, I've got some drugs in this hotel room. Want to come and take some and party with me? She agrees. I mean, silly mistake on her part, yes, but I'd be lying if I said I haven't wandered myself into some risky situations. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily drugs, but, you know, we've all gone somewhere that we shouldn't. So, you know, let's not be too harsh on Sylvia. Once inside, he tries to kiss her. She doesn't like this, so she swings back and she smacks him across the face. This sets him off, and he pulls out a baseball bat and he beats her to death. That's why there was blood on the ceiling, blood on the door, and that's why her teeth were scattered around the hotel room. Leonard Fraser then tells Quinn that he raped her dead body and he dragged her into the hotel bathroom. He attempts then to clean up the blood in the room, but it's too much. So instead, he wraps her body in a bedsheet and he drags her to the nearest place that he can find to hide a body, and that's a freezer at the end of the hotel corridor. He says to Quinn, by putting her here, I'm pretty much going to get rid of any DNA evidence because it'll all be frozen off. This guy is new idiot levels. He is levels of fucking idiot you can't even imagine. The next bit's insane. 3 days after killing Sylvia and leaving her in the hotel freezer, he reads in the paper that the hotel is to be demolished. Now, it's just a bizarre coincidence that this is what's happening, but he reads this in the paper and he says, fuck no, this can't happen. So what does he do? He returns to the hotel and he gets her body. Yeah, he goes to, her body hadn't been discovered in this freezer. He goes to where her body is, and without anyone seeing him, he takes the body out and he puts it in his car. When he does this, he leaves DNA of Sylvia all over himself and all over the vehicle. All of this information has come from Quinn, the ex-inmate, the friend, in inverted commas, the friend of Leonard Fraser. Police, of course, they go straight to Leonard Fraser. He's still out on bail and he gets angry. He realises Quinn has told police this information. Where else could it have come from? Now, Leonard Fraser tries to deny it. He says he never knew Sylvia. He doesn't even know that hotel. He says this story has been entirely made up by Quinn. Police start asking him about Julie Turner, Natasha Ryan, remember her name, and Beverly Lego. He denies knowing any of these women. So skip forward to 2002, and Leonard Fraser is in the Brisbane Supreme Court, and he's found guilty of the murder of 9-year-old Kira Steinhardt. Her mother said, tears of joy rolled down my face, and my heart is a happier place now that I can move on. And I know that Kira can too. The bastard's behind bars, and I couldn't be happier. The judge called him a sexual predator of the worst kind. He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So he's back in prison. And who does he meet? Yes, Quinn. Quinn, his old pal, the guy who shopped him in. Quinn is in on some petty offence, and they're reunited, although at first Leonard Fraser is obviously fucking raging that Quinn went to police. But it's not long before they kiss and make up. And Leonard Fraser, I mean, come on, idiot, you've learned nothing. Having learned nothing, starts to talk to Quinn again about the crimes that he has committed. Leonard Fraser, he has got to be the stupidest criminal ever. He begins making maps. He begins drawing out with Quinn the locations of the 4 missing women, the 4 bodies that he is saying, yes, I killed these women. He shows them on a map. This is where I put the bodies of Beverly Lego, Sylvia Benedetti, Julia Turner, and Natasha Ryan. So, of the 4 of those, so far, we know Sylvia was the body in the hotel. Julie was the mother outside of the nightclub. Beverly was the woman outside the bank. But Natasha Ryan, who was 14, we know the least about her. We know she's missing. But we don't know much about her death. However, Leonard Fraser, he continues to tell Quinn where he put each dead body. So the maps. He's drawing various versions of the maps at this point. Some are really accurate, some completely false. I think by this point, and this is guesswork, I think Leonard Fraser fancies himself as a bit of a player with the police. I think he thinks he's a bit of a master criminal. I think he thinks he can play about with the police. It's that Ted Bundy thing, isn't it? Although, I mean, let's be fair, this guy ain't no Bundy, that's for sure. It's the idea of bones for time. It's the, I have all the knowledge and I can tell police and I can tell family where the remains are, but I'm holding all the cards, all the information. I genuinely think he thought he was brighter than police at this point. So Quinn, he actually tries to convince Leonard Fraser to give the maps to police, both the accurate ones and the not accurate ones. He says, just give them all the maps you've drawn, because if you're going to be tried and you're going to plead insanity, you'll be fine. You'll get away with it. Fraser Leonard's like, nah, I think what I'll do is I'll just hang on to them for now. But here's what Quinn does. He goes to the prison officers and he says, I need to speak to a detective as soon as possible. So they get him a detective and he says, look, here's the thing. I am getting the most amazing amount of information and I don't know how to get that information to you. So police say, let's bug your cell. Let's bug your cell and we can invite Leonard Fraser in, get him to talk, and we will get what we need to find these missing women. So Quinn, he thinks about it. It's a very risky move. Leonard Fraser is a monster. And if he detects that Quinn was setting up a trap and bugging his cell and luring him in to talk, who knows what he might do. Detectives urge Quinn to do it, and eventually he says yes. So the trap is set. Quinn's cell has been bugged, and Quinn invites his pal Leonard Fraser to visit him and to chat. But will it work? Will police get the details that they need? I'll answer that question in part 2 of Hiding the Horrific. Okay? Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.